Better this than you are.
Have fun, take a deep breath.
Give them hell at the end. You like this?
Fight like hell like we do every week. You are the best here.
Brett, be affirmative. You told me to get on. Info. Ready. Ready. Slow. Green, green, green. Lock it down, lock it down.
I'm destroyed, and I just got drove through like 6 times on the 14th. What the f*** is he thinking? That is the stupidest thing I've seen in my career. Literally.
Everything you described is accurate. Haven't even finished the second stage yet. Half the field's wrecked.
Record. Hell yeah!
11 got it. Proud of you there, Matt. Good job, pal. Thanks, man. Good job all day. Great work, my man. Great work.
Keep putting yourself in position. We'll win our share, right? We got one back today, brother. Good job.
10-4. Great job, guys.
And welcome back to Racing in the Draft. My name is Mark. Thanks for joining. Like everything's working. If the audio is not working, let me know. Chat. But welcome to Racing in the Draft. We're back for week 15 at Worldwide Technology Raceway, better known or formerly known as Gateway Raceway, where this is the second year for the Enjoy Illinois 300. Last year's inaugural race winner was Joey Logano. He had a tendency for winning first races at won the first race at the new Chase or the new LA Coliseum race, and then won this race, the inaugural race. So, will we see Joey Logano win again at Gateway? I think Kyle Busch may have something to say about that since he just missed it last year. But either way, thanks for joining. Before we get into this week, let's jump into last week's rain-delayed Coke 600, where Ryan Blaney finally got a win after 59 winless races in a row, points races in a row. So congratulations to Ryan Blaney for finally getting that win at the Coke 600. Boy, that was a long day of racing between the start of the Xfinity race, the whole Coke 600 with a rain delay in the middle of it, to finally finishing up with the Xfinity race at like 10:30, 11 o'clock at night. It was a long day of racing, kind of like today, the doubleheader between the trucks at Gateway and Xfinity at Portland. And boy, did I misread the Xfinity race. I didn't think the stage breaks, the way they did that, definitely caught me off guard, to say the least. But I don't do videos on that. It's a little hit or miss with the Xfinity and truck races. But either way, thanks for joining in. Let's take a look at last week's results from the Coke 600 at Charlotte, where Ryan Blaney, like I said, finally got the win. And as you see, I've now added little animations of the thumbs down on the things that I missed badly last week. And everybody missed the JJ Yeley making the optimal lineup. So yeah, congrats from JJ Yeley making the optimal lineup. Didn't see that coming. He ended up in 16th. So I guess Rick Ware Racing is actually going to try to at least finish races. I think even JJ finished on the lead lap, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, that was a big surprise. In fact, going back and look at all my tournaments that I was in, nobody had the optimal lineup. In fact, nobody was close. Nobody had JJ Yeley in their lineups. So not only did I miss it, I think 98% of all lineups missed the JJ Yeley call. Let me know if you happen to put JJ Yeley in one of your lineups last week. Well, I think Matt, who follows this channel pretty regularly, had JJ Yeley in his lineup. But I definitely missed on the Bubba Wallace, Chris Buescher, and Ricky Stenhouse Jr., who didn't quite make the optimal lineup, but still had really good points days. But either way, our optimal lineup challenge after 14 races has really started to tighten up, at least. I mean, the most we've got is 5 with Kyle Larson and Ricky Stenhouse Jr. and William Byron. Ross Chastain, Justin Haley, and Tyler Reddick all with 4. So pretty interesting to see how that's really starting to tighten up. We've almost filled this entire bracket out, which typically doesn't happen until almost the start of the playoffs. So we've had quite a few different drivers make the optimal lineup challenge or make the optimal lineup throughout the year. What's up, Matt? I had 5 out of 20 JJ Elliott lineups, just no Blaney. Wow, you are a much more brave man than me and most by putting JJ Elliott in your lineup, and hopefully it paid off for you. So I know I got a message from Andrew, who joined us also last week, who ended up doing really, really well. If he happens to join tonight, I'll let him share what he did. I typically, if you happen to send me a message saying what you did, I don't share how well anybody did. That's up to you if you want to share that, or let me know that you want to share that. I'll be more than happy to, or not. So, but congrats to Andrew last week for doing really, really, really well in one of the tournaments that he was in. So, but either way, we are headed to flyover country in the middle of the country, just outside of St. Louis, to Worldwide Technology Gateway for the Enjoy Illinois 300. This is a funny little track. It's kind of kind of races like a short track, but it also has some pretty high speeds. It's probably its closest comparison track is going to be New Hampshire, which we only race at once a year. But other tracks that we look at are going to be Richmond, Phoenix, and Nashville Superspeedway. So, but either way, it is a 1.25 mile oval. Turns 1 and 2 are banked at 11 degrees, and then turns 3 and 4 at 9 degrees. It looks like a flat Darlington. Yeah, because it's kind of an oblong, egg-shaped looking thing. And it's the banking down in turns 1 and 2 only being 11 degrees, but being as tight as it is, and turns 1 and 2 are down here, if you're not real familiar with this track. Because it's such it's tight like Martinsville is, and then down here is much more wide and broad, almost like a Nashville or New Hampshire. So it's a combination of a couple different things that are going on here, which makes it really difficult to kind of get a grip on which one of these two wins do you want. And it really seems like you really want to have a good runoff of 2. It seems like you can make it through 3 and 4 fairly well, and a little bit easier as long as you can get off turns 2 really well. Just because the speeds get so slow through turn 2. But either way, we're going 240 laps, so not many laps for only a 1.25 mile race. It's only 300 miles in length. You would think that this goes by in a hurry, and it kind of does. It definitely will go by in a much bigger hurry than what the Coke 600 did. But it still is not... being only 240 laps and being that short, it goes by a little bit longer than you would think it would, but it still goes by pretty quickly. The Dominator points aren't going to be the end-all. It's going to be much more finishing positions, value picks, and place differentials is kind of what we're really kind of hunting for. But we'll look at last year's results once we get through all the drivers and everything. But like I said, our track comparisons, as you can see, it's a little bit like New Hampshire, mostly in 3 and 4. Like I said, you could almost look at it a little bit like a Martinsville, Richmond, Phoenix, which are both, 1 mile and 0.75 miles, and then Nashville Superspeedway has this long, the whole thing almost turns except for just along that backstretch. But those are probably the most comparison tracks that we can look at. But either way, let's get into what you really came for, is the driver-by-driver breakdown. We look at their stats, look at their history, and there's not much history here for Gateway because, like I said, they've only had one race at Gateway in the Cup Series. They've done a lot of truck races at this track over time, and it's actually got a weekly series that they run there, and some guys have had some past experience, like Kenny Wallace used to race here a lot when in the super late models and things like that. But kind of break down this box here and kind of explain everything that's going on here. If you happen to be new to the channel, if you're like Family Man, Matt. He probably knows everything that's going on in this box at this point. But Kyle Larson on DraftKings is 11,300. His starting position is 22nd for the race. He qualified 22nd. In practice, he practiced second, which this is one lap, his fastest lap that he had. He was second in speed. He did a total of 15 laps of practice. They only had 20 minutes, so that kind of tells you speeds aren't real fast here. He never got to a 10-lap consecutive average. So what that means is somewhere in this 15 laps, he went in and got some adjustments done to his car, so he never made a 10-lap consecutive average, where the next driver we look at does have that, and his place in that 10-lap consecutive average will show up here. But next down here is the last 5 races. This is typically the last 5 races at the track, but since we've only been to Gateway once, we have Gateway from last year. We've got the Richmond race from earlier this spring, the Phoenix race from earlier this spring, Nashville from last year, and Loudon from last year. Mostly because those are the most comparable tracks to Gateway or Worldwide Technology. I'm going to call it Gateway. It's much easier and much faster to say than Worldwide Technology Raceway. Really long title for a name. I get it. They bought the sponsorship. But so in here is the 5 races that we are looking at. So inside those 5 races, Kyle Larson has 1 win, which was at Richmond earlier this spring. He's got 3 top 5s, 3 top 10s, and 5 top 20s. He's got a 62.6 DraftKings average, which is the best DraftKings average of anybody in the field. He has a 7th place average finish for those 5 races also, which is not the best average finish. We'll find that out here shortly. And then we look at the last race that they raced at here, which was the only race, which was the Gateway 2020, where he finished 12th. And then typically here I would put down the full history at the track. Well, they've only had 1 race, and as you know, Kyle Larson finished 12th. A lot of times, like at Charlotte, I think Kyle Larson had like 20 starts or something, and had all of his stats for those 20 total starts. But since there's only 1, we know he finished 12th. Don't have to go into more detail there. So not much happening over here this week. But Kyle Larson. So then I have got my ranking system, which is kind of an algorithm of past history at the track, past history at similar style tracks. So this takes into account, I look at 10 races, so I'll look at probably the last 2 or 3 Richmonds, the last 2 or 3 Phoenixes, the last 2 Nashvilles, the last 2 Loudons, and of course last year's Gateway. So that kind of gets thrown in the mix. Then I also look at what the current trend is. So I'm looking at the last 10 races that they've run. So we're at week 15. So the last 14 races, 10 of those, the last 10, I look at. That kind of gets thrown in the pot. Then I looked at practice. That gets thrown into the pot. And then I look at qualifying for place differential, and that gets thrown into the pot. Once you do all that, it all comes out. Kyle Larson shows up first in my ranking system. That kind of lets me know, hey, I need to pay attention to Kyle Larson, or a BJ McLeod's going to come up 35th or 36th, and I know, okay, I'm not going to waste my time putting much BJ McLeod in my lineups. Just like JJ Elliott. And the algorithm is not perfect by any means. Some of it is you kind of have to use a little bit of gut feeling, especially when you're watching practice. Maybe you hear about somebody that has to go to the rear, but still has a 5th place starting spot. Those types of things were kind of what does not go into the algorithm that spits out my ranking system. But then this 35 to 40% is I run a total of 40 lineups, and I run about 4 to 6 tournaments that I run these 40 lineups in. And Kyle Larson, I have between 35 to 40% in my lineups. James Woodford, hey, yeah, I made the show. Hey, thanks, James. Appreciate you joining in. Who do you like this week for the win, or who do you like for DraftKings? What do you think about Corey LaJoie moving to the 9 for a week, Chase Elliott being suspended, and Carson Hocevar getting a shot to drive the number 7? So lots of different little things happening this weekend in the race. Do you like any of those calls, or are you are you fading off of most of those? I'll give you my 2 cents once we get down to those guys, but I think it does make the race intriguing, not to have a Chase Elliott in it, and I wonder how many fans will stay away and protest of Chase Elliott not being in the. Because when he got hurt, the TV ratings dropped off, and then they came back, and now he's going to be gone again. So we'll see what the ratings do. I think it might actually be interesting to kind of see what happens with Corey LaJoie driving the 9. So did he look fast? Yes. Denny definitely looked fast in practice. We'll get to him. He's in about 2 or 3 spots down here. Next in line here is William Byron, $11,000, starting 7th. He was 3rd in practice. He had 22 total laps of practice, and he came in slotted 7th on his 10-lap consecutive average. So where Kyle Larson did not make 10 consecutive laps, William Byron did, and he slotted in 7th on that speed. William Byron does have 1 win, which was at the Phoenix Raceway earlier this year. And along with that, he's got 1 top 5, 1 top 10, 3 top 20s in those 5 races that I listed above. A 35.9 Draftkings average and an 18.0 average finish. He finished 19th in this race last year, and he came in 4th on my ranking system. I've got him in 35% of my lineups. Christopher Bell, 10,700, starting 4th. 23rd in practice, so a little slow in practice speeds, and then came out and qualified. So they must have bumped the air pressures up on his tires, and he got in a really nice hot lap during qualifying. 20 laps total of practice, and he was 15th in his 10-lap consecutive average. So when you see a big discrepancy like this, sometimes that makes me worry a little bit. But when we look at Christopher Bell's history, he's got 1 win in the last 5 races that we're comparing. He won the Loudon 2022 race last year. And then if we look at his stats, he's got 5 top 10. So all 5 of the races inside what we're looking at, he's finished 10th or better. So this racetrack style definitely kind of fits Christopher Bell's wheelhouse really well. 5.6 average finish, which is the best in the field. A 52.0 Draftkings average at those 5 races. And he finished 9th in this race last year. So quite impressive for Christopher Bell. Maybe somebody definitely to keep an eye on. And I think practice may be more of an outlier than his qualifying spot. Paul Moss, how we doing tonight? I think LaJoie may overdrive in DNF. We will see if he uses his head or his bumper. I'm liking Toyota to win. Yeah, I definitely like the Toyotas. I think Hendrick might end up being a little overrated for this race. And I tell you what, there's something about momentum and Ryan Blaney. When we get to him, I think he's coming up here shortly. Here's James Woodruff, sorry. Too bright, I can't quite see the screen. Denny Hamlin here, 10,500. Yep, not quite as fast as William Byron in practice, but his 10-lap consecutive average was very quick, and he ended up qualifying slated in 3rd. But we look at our track averages over the last 5. He doesn't have a top 5, 2 top 10s, and 3 top 20s. So a little concerning that he hasn't quite finished the way he needs to at some of these tracks. But he typically races pretty well at Phoenix and Richmond. Not as great at Nashville and Loudon. And he had this is the track where he and Ross Chastain first tangled last year. So then he had some issues that were a little bit out of his control with Ross Chastain last year, which kind of hurt him. And got that 34th place finish, which pushes his average finish to 17.8. So, I mean, we never know from week to week who's going to mess with who. I mean, Denny Hamlin and Chase Elliott have kind of had a little bit of a tiff for many years, going back to Martinsville in 2019, I think, or even 2018. So there's always the outlier of, does Denny end up tangling with somebody? And Denny wants to know why he gets booed at racetracks. Well, start making enemies with the 2 of the most popular drivers in NASCAR, you're going to get booed. But either way, as you can see, I've got Denny Hamlin slated in at 7th on my ranking system, and I have 25 to 30% in my lineups. Another Toyota that I really, really like, probably more than Denny Hamlin and right up there Christopher Bell, is Martin Truex Jr., who has been just very, very consistent so far this year. Martin Truex Jr., 10,300, starting fifth. His practice speeds were okay. 11th in single lap, 17th and 10 lap consecutive average. And if we look at these 5 races in the comparison chart, he's got 1 top 5, 2 top 10s, and 4 top 20s with a 12th place average finish. And he finished 6th in this race last year and led actually a fair amount of laps. So definitely, oh, that scares me. Which part scares you? The Denny Hamlin and his stats at similar tracks? Is that what scares you? I mean, Denny's also just, he wears his emotions on his sleeves. Do you like Truex over Hamlin and Cash? Do you like Truex more than Denny and Cash? I like Denny probably a little bit more in tournaments. I think more people are going to lean towards Truex. I think he's probably a safer bet. So if I'm playing Cash and I'm having to pick one of these two, and I don't play a whole lot of Cash, so I always try to make sure I emphasize that I play mostly tournaments. I understand Cash games. I just like to take bigger risks, and Cash is a little bit more safe. I probably should play more Cash, but I like Martin Truex Jr. more than Denny Hamlin Cash, and I like Denny more than I like Truex in tournaments. Even though I think I just contradicted myself because I've got 35 to 40% Martin Truex Jr. For my tournament play than I do Denny. Mostly because starting spot, and Denny just has a little bit of a hot head and always thinks other people are at fault. Even though last week he definitely he pinched the heck out of Chase Elliott. I don't know how many times somebody's got to get pinched before that, the bumper comes out. Yeah, I know you're a tournament player, but you still help me out a lot. Well, hey, I'm glad I could help you out, James, and I appreciate you tuning in. And I love to have the conversations in the chat. Kind of helps everybody out and kind of gives us all a chance to think about who we're playing and who we're not playing. Sometimes we overlook some people. Like I completely missed the bus last week on Ryan Blaney. But Mark, you may have heard the 12 lost pit stall selection is in bad traffic spot. Plus, pit crew famous for fall. The 12 loses pit selection because he failed inspection twice. Is that what happened? His pit crew is famous for fail. Guess I'm a little confused by that last sentence, but did Ryan miss did Blaney fail inspection twice? Is that what happens? But yeah, if Ryan did that, pit selection is going to be something that will be important, as we saw last week with William Byron having that first pit stop or pit stall and was able to get out so quickly. It's not as big of an advantage as at Gateway as it was at. It's important at every race, so don't take that the wrong way. But Charlotte is immensely more important than some of these other tracks. So I mean, Ryan Blaney, he's going to be fast. He's been very consistent over the last couple of weeks, and I missed the boat on how consistent he'd been until I went back and looked. And if we look at his record at similar style tracks here, he's got 3 top 5s, 3 top 10s, and 4 top 20s. A 10.6 average finish. He finished 4th in this race last year. Qualified 2nd. Practice speeds were okay. Nothing too dramatic, nothing too high. Just kind of, I think he kind of had what Christopher Bell did, and they pumped his air pressures up, and he went out and turned a fast lap. Pit selection gets him. Yeah, he does keep his starting spot. And if he failed twice, he loses his pit selection and his car engineer. So not his car chief, not the crew chief, but the car chief, can't be at the racetrack. And that, to be honest, that really doesn't matter. The pit selection's a little more important than some of these engineers and car chiefs and crew chiefs, because at that point the car's already set, it's already ready, and literally with technology these days, they'll just phone it in, and literally they'll phone it in. They'll be on two-way radio outside the track talking to whatever crew chief happens to be there and be like, "Yep, this is what we're gonna do. This is how you're gonna do it." And I think it's just kind of silly. I mean, one of the races, Kyle Larson's crew chief, when they had the 4-race suspension, he was literally up in one of the suites and was telling the interim crew chief what to do. So, not that big of a deal. And the pit selection, it hurts a little, but it's not awful. So I think Ryan Blaney will be fine. I don't love his starting spot. I don't ever like anybody that starts first or second. Anybody that's watched my videos knows that, but at this point, and that may be a little bit of a detriment to me, but it just always kind of scares me, and it burned me today in the Xfinity race. But that was, did you guys watch the Xfinity race? It was exciting, but it was kind of, at least for DraftKings, was a rough race. You had some guys come from the back, but it really played out kind of strange having the non-competitive pit stops at 25 laps each. So, I mean, it was cool that Cole Custer won, but it seemed like the top 10, that was it. It was tough for anybody else to get back up into the top 10. I mean, Sam Mayer had a great run and got into the top 10, but we're talking about Cup. That's what you guys really came for. I think Xfinity's actually one of the best races in NASCAR currently. So I do really, really love to watch the Xfinity series and do DraftKings on that. Maybe if I ever get enough time, I'll do 2 shows. But I mean, this show and this spreadsheet and everything else that I do takes about 15 to 18 hours a week to put together. So I enjoy it. It really, don't think I'm saying that as a negative, because it really kind of lets me hone in on a lot of my picks, and I think it's helped my selections out when it comes to DraftKings. So, but I like Ryan Blaney. I don't mind his second starting spot. I think there's a lot of momentum behind Ryan, and he's been pretty consistent at similar style tracks. Kyle Busch, $9,800, pole position. Kyle Busch was literally battling for the win last year with Joey Logano. So he really kind of, this track fit his style last year. And it seems like he's kind of picked up right there where he left off, taking the pole, 7th in single lap. Did not do a 10-lap consecutive average. I was at my kid's baseball tournament all day today, so I have not watched all of qualifying. I've got bits and pieces of it. But I was also watching the truck race, then I watched the Xfinity race, then I was doing this. So I've read a lot of the Twitter stuff about qualifying. I've not watched it. So if you've got more information if you happen to watch qualifying, definitely hit me up and let me know. But starting first, Kyle Busch has really nowhere to go but back. And as we know, Kyle Busch has a tendency to speed on pit road or have pit road issues. And that's what scares me sometimes about taking pole sitters. I mean, Ryan Preece at Martinsville had the pole and scared the heck out of me. And I was like really worried because he went out and led the first 125 laps and then sped on pit road. And that was the end of it. So that ended up being okay. But yeah, I mean, one slip up by the pole sitter and they're out of the optimal lineup. I mean, they're out of the top 14 in points. So that's what scares me. But I also get burned sometimes because. Do you like Busch to potentially dominate the beginning? Yeah. Looked earlier. The first stage is. Oh yeah, first stage is only 45 laps. I mean, that's not even a full fuel run, or tire run. and we don't have rain, so we won't have a competition caution. So literally, they'll run the first 45 laps. So yeah, I think Kyle Busch could easily take off and lead the first 45 laps. That was 45 laps out of 240, enough to dominate the rest of the race, potentially. Especially if he doesn't screw his pit stop up and his pit crew doesn't screw himself up. Yeah, I mean, a lot of times, if on pole sitters, I'm even less than 10 to 15% on ownership. I'm more like 5 to 10%. So I've got a little bit more ownership than I typically like on the pole sitter. But I definitely wouldn't talk anybody out of it, especially because he did finish second in this race last year. But there's also a warning that taking the pole sitter has a lot more risk than it does potential reward. So I hope that it helps you. I don't know. Yeah, I think he could win stage 1. I think the first stage only being 45 laps is not that long. So yeah, I think you're pretty safe in stage 1. Ross Chastain next in line here at 9,600, starting 8th. And if we look at this, it's interesting because he ended up finishing 8th, where Denny Hamlin ended up finishing 34th. And remember, I mean, Denny literally almost had Ross Chastain stopped on the track last year, and he was still able to battle back and get back up to 8th. So, and if we look at his stats at similar style tracks, he's got 2 top 5s and 4 top 10s. And a 9.6 average finish. I mean, that's pretty impressive numbers at similar style tracks. So I think Ross Chastain probably easily finishes where he starts, if not finishes better. And I think Ross is starting to use his head a lot more. He's still being aggressive, but he's being aggressive at the right times. I think he realized after screwing up with Larson much as he did, Chase Elliott as much as he did, Denny Hamlin, he's ended up ruining his races for the most part. And he had the car to beat between he and Truex at Darlington, and Ross just screwed that up himself. Where if he would have just been patient and raced behind Kyle Larson, he either would have found a way to get around him if Kyle had messed up, or he would have finished second. So I think Ross is getting smarter. I think Ross finishes at least 8th, if not better. Joey Logano, 9,400. I thought of this. You can wait until you get down to one of the guys, but are you completely fading Legacy Motorsports? Eric Jones had a top 10 at this race last year. Yeah, I'll cover Legacy when we get further down there. I think last week was a little bit of a fluke. I don't think it was as catastrophic as the potential that you would think that the things that may have been happening, I don't think were actually happening. But we'll get down there in a minute. So I appreciate you bringing that up, Matt. And yeah, we'll definitely discuss it. Joey Logano, 9,400, starting 6th. He did win this race last year. He was 1st in single lap speed, 8th in 10 lap consecutive average. So, I mean, pretty good for Ford. I mean, Brian Blaney, Joey Logano, both starting top 6. You know, the Fords didn't have speed for the longest time, and they now are starting to show that they've got some speed. And every time that I think that they don't have speed at a track and they don't look good in practice, they end up showing up halfway through the race and end up doing fairly well. Now, long run speed, I think the Chevys still have them. I think the Toyotas still have them. But we're starting to see a little bit of resurgence with Joey, Brian Blaney. Kevin Harvick's been running pretty decent. And, I mean, you look at the 2 guys from RFK Racing, they're having pretty good, consistent finishes as long as their car's clean. You know, if they end up having an issue, then, I mean, that hurts anybody. But when they've got a clean race car, they haven't gotten tangled up with somebody else, the RFK drivers are definitely 2 to really be reckoned with. I think they'll end up both getting wins before the end of the year. But another Toyota here, Tyler Reddick, 2311. 2311 was really fast last week, and had been pretty fast for the last few weeks. Especially Bubba Wallace, and we'll cover him in a minute. Tyler Reddick, 9200, starting 9th. He was 5th in single lap, 3rd in 10 lap consecutive average, so really good practice speeds. Qualified 9th. This track doesn't quite fit Tyler Reddick's ideal track. Typically, he likes more the 1.5 mile high speed, where you can rip the wall, the Darlingtons, the Miami Homestead, the Charlotte style tracks, but he seems to do okay at this track, and he does pretty well at Nashville. So, but he does not typically do well at Richmond, Martinsville, other short style tracks. I mean, this track, you can't rip the top. It is a bottom feeding track. If you try to run the top or even get out of the second lane, you're going to spin out. So I'm surprised Tyler Reddick runs as well as he does here at this track. 45 likes, yeah, he likes to rip the top. Jones killed you last week. Yeah. I had a little bit of Jones also. I had a little bit of Jimmy Johnson, and yeah, a little bit of Noah Gragson. That definitely hurt last week. Kevin Harvick, another Ford that we were talking about. I mean, the Fords came to qualify. Starting 4th, 27th though in single lap, 22nd and 10 lap consecutive average. That's rough. And he finished 33rd in this race last year. But if we take this race out and we look at Richmond, Phoenix, he almost won. Late caution hurt him. He won the fall race at Richmond last year. That's not inside this mix. He finished top 10 at Nashville and finished top 10 at Loudon. So this, and I don't think there's a track that Kevin doesn't like, but this one kind of fits into Kevin's wheelhouse pretty well. The starting 4th doesn't scare me a whole lot with Kevin. That and he and his crew chief always have a tendency when all of a sudden you think Kevin's having a bad day, all of a sudden he quietly shows up and finishes 5th or 6th. So I think Kevin's going to be kind of in that same boat this time. And if they have anything close to the setup that they had at Phoenix earlier this year, he's going to be somebody to be reckoned with. So I'm not overly concerned about their practice speeds, just because this track does fit Kevin's wheelhouse pretty well. Alex Bowman, 8,600, starting 18th. We've got some PD upside potential here with Alex. Alex had great speed last week. He's showing that he's got no real issues from his back issue where he broke his back earlier, 5-6 weeks ago, which is amazing. But the other thing is this doesn't, as we see, is this type of track doesn't fit his wheelhouse. But he has won at Richmond before. He has won at Martinsville before. Finished 13th in this race. He was 14th in single lap, 5th in 10 lap consecutive average. So not awful. I don't mind Alex Bowman, especially starting 18th. We've got some PD upside potential here. So Bowman is one of my favorite mid-range plays. Yeah, I like Alex Bowman, especially starting 18th. That's a little safer than maybe a Kevin Harvick starting a 4th. But the real question is, do we think Bubba Wallace is actually for real now? He's 4 out of the last 5 races he's finished in the top 5 now. I mean, he would have won the All-Star race if Kyle Larson wasn't there. And nobody was. I mean, Tyler Reddick finished 3rd. So 2311's, I think, figured something out. They're faster than Joe Gibbs, and they're finishing consistently better than Joe Gibbs racing. Bubba Wallace just, and it has nothing to do with all the other crap about Bubba. Bubba just, and I've said this many, many weeks on here. The thing that goes on between Bubba's head, I mean, flicking the TV camera off last week, flipping Eric Almirola off, then getting in a shoving match with Eric Almirola during the rain delay. Yeah, sure, it didn't bother his finish, at the end of the day at the Coke 600, but Bubba's got to quit that stuff. Plain and simple. I don't know if anybody listens to Denny Hammond's podcast, but I mean, even Denny, his owner, was like, Bubba's got to stop that. Bubba just needs to worry about racing and not worry about anything else. And I've thought that for the longest time. Bubba's got a lot of really, really good talent. He just needs to get rid of the noise outside and focus on doing what Bubba knows how to do. He knows how to run a race car. No doubt about it. This one doesn't really fit his wheelhouse. It's kind of like an Alex Bowman. It doesn't. He's okay at these tracks, but he's not as good as he is at 1.5 miles. Now, I didn't think he was going to be very good at North Wilkesboro, and ended up having a really good car at North Wilkesboro. So, starting 20th, I've got some ownership this week in Bubba. I'm still a little unsold on the mental fortitude of Bubba. Probably the best way to put it. He finished 26th in this race last year. We'll see. I've got some ownership. I don't have a whole lot, but I do have some ownership. Yeah, I mean, all this stuff that Bubba's doing is all self-induced. And he's listening to the noise out in the stands, and he's listening to the media, and he's listening to social media, and he's listening to all those things, and it gets into his head, and he needs to stop. He needs to turn TV off, and he needs to stop looking at all the crap online, and Bubba just needs to go and run races and prove everybody wrong. That's the best thing for Bubba. 23 has 3 top 5s in a row. Probably not here, though. I have won far more by betting against the 23 head-to-head. Yeah, just when you think Bubba has started to turn a corner, Bubba goes and does something stupid. Like flipping TV cameras off and flipping other drivers off. It's just going to end up getting you put into the wall. Plain and simple. Or you're going to miss a corner, you're going to miss something up on pit road. I've got some ownership this week, but I would not be surprised if this is the week where the wheels come off a little bit and we're back to having the old Bubba again. Prove me wrong. I would love to have Bubba run a good race. I don't have a problem with Bubba running top 5s. Bubba's he's a good race car driver. I just wish he'd get rid of the other crap that's going on around him. Prove everybody wrong. Would love to see it. Brad Keselowski. If I'm choosing between these two, I'm choosing Brad this week. Even though, I mean, doesn't have any top 5s, but a lot of this was last year, and Brad was still trying to figure out how to be a team owner and trying to figure out how to build RFK Racing back from the brink of death, pretty much. And I think they're there. But 8,200, 10th in single lap, didn't do a 10-lap consecutive average. He finished 20th in this race last year. He's got a 16.8 average finish at the 5 tracks we're preparing. I mean, stats are very similar to Bubba Wallace. I mean, Bubba's finishing more consistently, so I could easily see the argument of taking Bubba over Brad. I just think RFK and Brad and Chris Buescher are right on that edge of breaking out and having a run like Bubba's been having. Knocking off top 5s and being there for the win. So, I've got more Brad than I do Bubba and Alex Bowman. 25 to 30% ownership. Daniel Suarez, $8,000, starting 13th. I mean, out of this whole grouping here, other than Kevin Harvick, Daniel's starting 13th. And if we look at, he's got the worst results out of anybody on this page. Only 1 top 10, 2 top 20s, an 18.4 average finish. I mean, Alex Bowman's got a little bit worse, but at least you got more top 2s and top 3s. Finished 23rd in this race last year. 24th in single lap, 19th in 10-lap consecutive average. Came in at 23rd on my rankings. I think I've got him in 1 or 2 lineups, but that's about it. I just don't love the starting spot here for Daniel. Daniel was starting 20th or 21st or 22nd. I'd have a little bit more ownership, but starting this too far up, I think he outkicked his coverage. I think he might finish where he starts. Ty Gibbs, 7,800. One of these, kind of like Bubba Wallace, one of these days Ty Gibbs is going to figure out how to finish races. And the day that he does, he's going to end up with that top 5, top 3. And he's, like I said, I still would put money on the fact that I think Ty Gibbs wins a race this year. I mean, he almost had a great finish to the Coke 600 last week, and just ended up getting tied up with my boy Kyle Larson, self-spinning and taking Ty Gibbs with him, not on purpose. But Ty Gibbs is a master at studying the sport and studying tracks. Ty Gibbs is going to win a race, and it's going to be soon. And everybody's going to be like, oh, wow. And I'm going to say I called it here. And I've been calling his shot for a few weeks now. And I'm not saying this is the week. I'm just saying this year Ty Gibbs will get a win before No Griggs. And it could be as early as Sonoma next week. Because Ty Gibbs is really, really good at road courses. But either way, we don't really have much of any stats for Ty. We've got the Richmond race earlier this year and the Phoenix race earlier this year, where he's got one top 5, an 18.5 average finish. He didn't race this race last year, so this is going to be a new track for him. But like I said, he probably spent the 30 hours in the sim running this track. That's just what Ty Gibbs does. Once he figures it out and figures out how to win in that Cup car, he's going to be a force to be reckoned with. Chase Briscoe, God, I thought last week Chase Briscoe had the same car that he had the previous 3 weeks, and he was going to be absolute garbage, and ended up turning him around and having a decent race last week. Maybe Chase Briscoe is finally starting to figure out things, but then he goes out and qualifies 25th after practicing 8th. There's something going on here. I don't know what it is, but starting 25th, I'm taking a shot, and I'll be very honest. It is a gut shot. There's nothing in the stats that tell me to take Chase Briscoe, other than I just think maybe they're going to turn a corner. I've got him in 25 to 30% of my lineups. This is one that could cost me, and I'm just being honest. It's not based in fact. It's just based in gut. And I'm just taking a shot on Chase Briscoe this week. So don't, yeah, this would be one that you could easily come back next week and be like, yep, told you so. You shouldn't have taken as much of them as you did. But I'm going to. There's nothing in the stats that tell me that I should do that, but I'm doing it. Other than maybe where he's starting at 25th. Decent amount of PD upside play. Just like Chris Buescher. There's not much here in the stats. In fact, it's worse than Briscoe's. But I think 17 car, RFK, I mean, they both practiced pretty well. 12th and 8th in single lap speed. Okay. But then you go out and qualify 25th and 27th. Is that everybody else bumping their air pressures up and adjusting their car for a qualifying run, and these guys didn't? Or is there something else out there? But I'm probably too heavy in ownership on these guys. And like I said, I've always been honest with anybody that's watching this. These two they're gut shots. There's nothing based in fact on why I'm heavy on these two, other than it's a gut shot. So, like I said, I like to be honest. Corey LaJoie, 7,400, driving the number 9 for Chase Elliott. Luckily enough, he's starting 30th, so we can actually take some ownership in him, and more likely Corey LaJoie in the number 9 is going to probably finish better. Is Corey LaJoie as good of a racer as Josh Berry? I don't know. We're going to find out tomorrow. I think he is. I think this is an amazing opportunity. Does he screw it up? And I think somebody said earlier, is he going to overdrive this car? Yeah, Matt has the same gut feeling about Briscoe. Okay, good. Because usually that's pretty scary. If Matt and I are on the same page with something, that usually means something's going on. Corey LaJoie. I love this opportunity for Corey. Corey is one of the best guys in our sport. Do I think he do I think he screws it up? No, I don't. Anytime that Spire has put the extra money and effort into the number 7 car, Corey LaJoie has made the most out of it. The problem is that doesn't happen real often. So I think Corey understands what's been laid upon him. And I think the problem is if Corey's going to do either of the two, he's going to underdrive the car instead of overdrive the car because he might be a little too nervous to overdrive it. Now, does Alan Gufferson get into his head and say, drive this car, built to drive it, go for it. You only get this shot once. I guess could screw it up again, but I think Corey LaJoie easily gets himself a top 20. So that's 10 spots, PD spots. And if he's there late, he might be able to get himself into a top 10 spot. Now, Alex Gustafson is also really good at strategizing and could easily get Corey on a pit cycle that lands Corey in the same spot that Josh Berry ended up at Richmond and got second. So Corey just takes care of the equipment. And I'm going to say the same thing when we get to Carson Hocevar. He takes care of his equipment, figures out the setup, learns everything he can, and is there towards the end. Corey LaJoie's going to have a good day. And I don't think he'll overdrive it. I've got 20 to 25% ownership. I'm taking a shot on him. We'll see. I think that's going to be one of the most intriguing storylines to come out of this weekend. Does Corey LaJoie deserve to have a better ride than the 7? Tomorrow that will get an answer. Unless somebody else takes Corey LaJoie out. We'll see. That happens. Somebody blows a tire 4 spots up in front of Corey and there's nowhere for Corey to go and the car gets destroyed. Then, no fault of Corey's, but that happens. Eric Almirola, $7,200, starting 24th. For some reason, so Eric Almirola, and there's another driver that had really good runs last year and also have really good runs at similar style tracks. We'll get to the other person in a minute. But Eric Almirola, starting 24th, 9th in single lap, 6th in 10 lap consecutive average, and finished 5th in this race last year. And it wasn't a fluky finishing 5th. He was running top 10 most of the race last year. So Eric likes this track. This track also races a lot like a short track. It's heavy, hard braking going into turns 1 to get through turn 2, and then heavy braking again going into 3. That's right up Eric's wheelhouse. Some of these guys will even say it kind of corners like a road course. Eric's pretty good at road courses. Pretty good at short tracks with heavy braking. So, probably could figure out who the other person is that runs well at Gateway. By me saying what I just said. But Eric, starting 24th, I think there's a lot of room for improvement for Eric throughout the week, through the weekend, tomorrow. Finishing 5th, if he can even finish 10th, that's a huge plus. I've got some pretty good ownership in Eric Almirola, 25%. Austin Dillon, $7,000, 20th in single lap, 12th in 10 lap consecutive average. Does not have a top 10 in any of the 5 races that we're looking at. Starting 16th. I think this is a spot where Austin Dillon finishes where he starts. No better, no worse. I think he gets top 20. And if he happens to get anything better than that, it's because there's more attrition up front. Not because of anything Austin Dillon's doing. So, is that enough to take a risk on Austin Dillon? Not for me. I've got him in a couple lineups. Just to be contrarian on my other lineups. But that's the only reason why. So, there's nothing in here that tells me that Austin Dillon has anything better than a 15th to 20th place car. Now, I don't think, if if everything just stays normal, he doesn't get tied up in anything, I think that's where he finishes. Just that's where I think he is. Whereas Ryan Preece, 6,800, this track fits Ryan Preece's to a T, even though his stats don't show it. But you got to remember, this guy is slowly starting to work his way through the system. Tony Stewart is fully sold on Ryan Preece. This track runs a lot like a short track. Heavy braking. Ryan Preece runs really well at Nashville. Did not race Nashville last year, so we don't have that, and we don't have Loudon from last year. We don't have Gateway. The only two races that we have for Ryan Preece is Richmond and Phoenix. Where he's got a 15th place average finish between those two. Okay. Both races he's finished top 20. He ran really well at Martinsville until he had a bad pit stop, but on pit road. I told Matt earlier this week, Family Man, that Ryan Preece, I think, is a good long shot. Starting 29th, we've now got room for, I mean, if he goes out, gets a top 20, that's 10 spots in place differential. So I like some Ryan Preece. There is some stats to back this up.
Sorry.
Oh, he wants to talk now. Ever have that happen? Where the Amazon thing starts talking? Sorry, it doesn't happen often. Austin Cindric here, 6,600, starting 10th. He finished 11th last year in this race, okay? But you were 26th in single lap, and you didn't do a 10-lap consecutive average. And you've got a 16.8 average finish. Nothing is trending that you should be finishing top 10s. I don't have any ownership in Austin. Nothing in my gut says Austin's going to do better than 10th. I'm fading off of Austin Cindric, and more likely he's probably going to be faded off of because of his starting spot. If I'm looking at a 29th starting spot with Ryan Preece and a 10th starting spot with Austin Cindric, I'll take the Ryan Preece all day. Ricky Stenhouse Jr., 6,400. Kind of the same thing. I think you outkicked your covered, Ricky. Starting 12th, 28th in single lap, 13th in 10-lap consecutive average, with an average finish of 24.8. Finished 32nd in this race last year. Yeah, I don't have any interest in either of these guys. They're starting way too far up for me. That's that. One of these two guys Ricky might show up, but I don't think so. I think both of them are 17th to 23rd place finishers, and I think Austin Dillon finishes right there with them. And I think even Ryan Preece may be finishing right there with them. But Ryan Preece is starting 29th, and you can move up 13 to 15 spots. So I'll take the place differential in Ryan Preece. Or potentially even Eric Jones. Here we are. Legacy. We said we would discuss Legacy. Do I think Chevy is giving Legacy Motorsports their best equipment? No. Do I think they're giving them the worst equipment? No. Do I think Legacy did something with a part last week and didn't get caught because their car didn't go back to the technical center? Yes. Don't have proof of that. But it's really strange that both of them had a failure in almost exactly the same part failure, where no other Chevy out there had that part failure. And it just happened to coincide with Jimmy Johnson having issues on the track, but Jimmy Johnson's was an issue with damage, where Eric and Noah just seemed to have the issue at the same time. I think there's more to that story, and I just think they just didn't get caught. I think they're trying to figure something out, because I don't think they're getting their best from Chevy, but I don't think they're getting bunk parts from Chevy. Chevy doesn't want to go out that way, especially with two 7-time Champs being behind Legacy Motorsports. I just don't see it. I don't think that's the case. Now, like I said, I don't think they're getting the best of the best. I think they're just getting the normal stuff. So I think Legacy was trying something and just didn't get caught. So that's my thought on it. Eric Jones starting third first. Missed the beginning. I'm lost on this slate. Seems like old tires held off new tires and trucks today. Yes. Yes and no. Depends on how old the tires were. And we're also talking about two completely different cars, two different complete downforce packages. Oh, by the way, congratulations, Andrew. I got your message. Yeah, I mentioned earlier in the video that you had a good week last week, but I didn't go into details because that's not for me to share. But other than you had a really good week last week, so congratulations on that. And the question is, did you have JJ Elliott in any of your lineups? I'm just curious. Family Man did. Why, I don't know. I mean, good on him, but I think he was like one of the only guys out there that had any JJ Elliott. Just picking on you, Matt. But back to Eric Jones and Legacy. Starting 31st. Even Legacy is not in the same ballpark as Spire. They're not in the same ballpark as Rick Ware. They're not in the same ballpark as BJ McLeod. No, they're not in the same ballpark as Hendrick. They're somewhere in the middle. And Eric Jones is a good enough driver. Something weird's happening. So, yeah, you had Yaley. You're more than welcome for the help. That's awesome. I'm glad. I'm shocked that both you and Matt had JJ Yaley. That part definitely didn't come from me because I didn't have any JJ Yaley. So good on you. And I don't have JJ Yaley this week either. But Eric Jones starting 31st. I like Eric Jones starting 31st. He was 13th in single lap. Yeah, I mean, he's got 3 top 20s at similar style tracks. He finished 7th in this race last year. I'm taking a shot on Eric Jones this week. I'm not that worried. I mean, they're not getting their best from Chevy. They're not getting the worst. AJ Allmendinger. Here's the other road course guy, along with Eric Almirola, that I really like this week. 6,100, starting 11th. Practice speeds weren't great, 25th in single lap, but 14th in 10 lap. Okay. Now you gotta remember, 10 lap consecutive average. We only had, I think, 24 guys get to 10 lap consecutive average. But AJ Allmendinger has got 4 top 20s at the 5 similar style tracks. Okay. Starting 11th had me a little bit worried because the average finish is 18.4. But he finished 10th in this race last year. And that was a fairly competitive 10th last year. And not being super familiar with the next gen car. He's got a lot more time under his belt now. And he's kind of like, in my opinion, he's kind of like Kevin Harvick. He just quietly has good days. And kind of flies under the radar. And the only time that he ever has an issue is if somebody else wrecks into him. So I'm willing to take a shot on 11th place starting spot from AJ, even though I guess I didn't take too much of a shot, 0 to 5%. So I think I've got him in 2 or 3 lineups. But I'd be willing to take a shot on AJ starting 11th. I don't think he hurts you, and I don't think he helps. But this could easily be the weird outlier of the race. If AJ goes, and this is kind of like taking a Harrison Burton that's starting 14th, and Harrison Burton ends up finishing 9th. I think AJ has a capability at this track tomorrow to finish close to where he starts, but at 6,100, not a bad thing. So, and Harrison Burton also qualified really well again. I think he qualified 14th again. That is just a secret spot that he likes to get to. We're Justin Haley starting 23rd, finished 14th in this race last year, 22.6 average finish. At least there's a little bit more room of PD upside play. even though there's no real speed in practice or qualifying. So, I mean, I don't love the Justin Haley call. I don't love the AJ, but I think the AJ kind of makes me go, I wonder if there's something more here for AJ than meets the eye for this race. I don't know. But another good road course racer, Michael McDowell. Fourth in single lap, second in 10 lap consecutive average. What? Where'd that come from? But then you go out and stink it up and qualify 21st. But we look at his consecutive average, his average finish over these 5 races. It's a 15.6. Finished 18th in this race last year. 1 top 5, 4 top 10s, or 1 top 10 and 4 top 20s at similar style tracks. Okay. This seems like to be a pretty good sweet spot for Michael McDowell to get himself. I mean, even if he finishes, if he finishes where AJ starting 11th, that's a good day for $5,700. That's great value. I'll take it. But was practice fluky? Maybe. But Michael McDowell has a tendency to go on little runs where he finishes in or just right outside the top 10. Are we starting to see Michael McDowell maybe turn that corner? Maybe. McDowell, like AJ, smart racer, might not be the best, but they don't. Yeah, they typically don't drive over their heads. They get what the car gives them, and that's a road course mentality. If the car's giving it to you, you're gonna take everything it's got. If it's not there, though, they're going to be smart enough not to push it. And that's very much a road course racer mentality. They're going to race what the car has. Here's another one. Todd Gillen. I mean, this 38 car was on fire last week. And this 38 car has been on fire all year, for the most part. So is the 34. If they have clean race cars at the end of the race, they're finishing top 15. Possibly even top 10s. So both of these guys are smart racers. Todd Gillen's coming from great pedigree with his dad. And he's been doing really, really well, whether it's in the 38 or the 15. He had a little bit of a rough go of it last week, but Zane Smith drove this 38 car to, I think, the 12th place finish last week? Haley needs 15th place finish for 6 times value. I think he can get it. 15th for Haley. That's a tough hill. It's a tough hill to climb. But it's doable. I think I like Todd Gillen more than I like Justin Haley to get 6 times value. That helps you. I think Michael McDowell does the same thing. I like Todd Gillen and Michael McDowell more than I like Justin Haley, but I'm not completely opposed to Justin Haley either, Andrew. If that kind of helps you make a decision. And if I'm looking at all things equally, I'm probably liking the Todd Gillen starting 28th because of the PD upside play. Short flat tracks have not been well for Haley this year. No, they haven't. Only 2 top 20s. Where Michael McDowell's got 4 top 20s. And only Todd Gillen's only got 1 top 20. So probably out of all this mix, even though it's the worst PD upside play, it's not bad. Michael McDowell's probably the best play out of the 4 that are up here right now. Yeah, I'm right there with you, Matt. I think Michael McDowell is probably the best play of everybody that's on the board right now. And Carson Hocevar, depends on which Carson Hocevar we get tomorrow. We get the Carson Hocevar that's shown up in the last 2 Xfinity races. Watch out. He ran really, really smart races. If we get the Carson Hocevar that showed up for the Xfinity race prior to that, or a couple of the Cup races or the couple of the truck races earlier this year where he's bad out of hell, no, he's going to finish last. But once again, Carson's figuring this out. Hocevar's figuring this out. Figuring out being a bull in a china shop is not going to work for him. And he's starting to get results when he races Xfinity cars, getting results in the Truck Series. You know, I think he wanted that win so badly at Texas that it cost him a little bit. Got the win, but it cost him a little bit. But I think he figured some things out when it happened. And he was with a torn up race truck. Earlier today, Carson Hocevar finished top 10. He may have gotten to top 5. I know he was up towards the front, towards the end. I can't remember which place he actually finished, but Carson Hocevar's a really, really talented race car driver that I think is finally starting to get some tutelage, whether that's through Michael Waltrip or some of these other guys that he's leaning on. But I think Carson Hocevar is going to do the same thing that Corey LaJoie does. He's going to make the best out of this opportunity. These opportunities don't come around often. I mean, he's probably talked to Zane Smith. When Zane's had these opportunities, Zane has been very patient. He's learned how to race the car and done really well. Chandler Smith, same thing. And trust me, Carson, Zane, and Chandler Smith, I guarantee they've all been talking. Because they're like, Carson, you don't get a shot like this very often. So here's how you make the most out of it. Carson's going to go take care of his equipment. This track is big enough for him to stay on the lead lap and be around at the end. And the 7 car has the ability, and there's enough money in there that the car's not going to break halfway through like sometimes a BJ McLeod does or a Rick Ware. So I think if Carson's smart, he learns how to race this car. His car races way different than anything that NASCAR. I mean, you can go back and forth between Xfinity and trucks. In the 6th gen car, you could go between them all, and they raced somewhat similar. This next gen car races completely different. 5-speed variable transmission. Everything's different. The wheelbase is different. The contact patch is different. Everything's different for the car. The Carson needs to go out and just run laps. Be there at the end. He'll get himself probably a 23rd, 22nd place finish. Is that enough? Maybe. And if he happens to get lucky and there's some carnage and he's not in it, he'll get himself a top 20. I wish there was a little bit more PD upside potential here for Carson, and I would feel a little bit better about it. But as you can see, I mean, I've got 15 to 20% of most of these guys. And I think that's kind of the sweet spot for this race. And here we go. Harrison Burton starting 14th. And his practice speeds were crud. And he finished 25th last year. And next week I'm going to be sitting here going, well, I guess I should have taken Harrison Burton this week again. I mean, one of the toughest tracks they go to is Darlington, and Harrison Burton started 14th, and I think got top 10, or just where he started. And at 5,300, that's awesome. I'm still off of Harrison Burton again this week, and it may come back to bite me. And if it is, it is. I'm not willing to take a shot at Harrison Burton starting 14th when his practice speeds were not that great and his average finishes were not that great for this style track. So you can tell me next week, told you so. Or I could be like, yeah, that's what I thought would happen. Where Noah Gragson starting 32nd, now his practice speeds were crud. I mean, he was I think he was 24th, might be the worst in lap consecutive average, and he's third to last in practice speeds. He's got a 31st place average finish at Phoenix and Richmond. But starting 32nd, I mean, Noah's going to have a better finish than Greg Galding and BJ McLeod. Noah's a good race car driver. I don't understand why he was not this bad last year in this car. I don't know what's going on with Noah. And I hope he figures it out, because I think Noah's great for the sport. I mean, heck, he got into the All-Star race because of a fan vote. He's very well liked. These value plays are tough this week. Hard to get a handle on someone I truly Yeah. Um, which one of these guys do you like a lot? I'm trying to figure that out, Matt. Uh, is it Noah or Harrison or Gillen or McDowell? I don't know which one of these guys you're saying you like a lot. Like I know I like Noah. I love watching Noah race, especially in the Xfinity series. He's a lot of fun. He interacts with the crowd really, really well. I would love to see them turn it around. JJ Elliott's not starting 13th. That is a misprint. JJ is starting 36th, dead last. I messed that one up. That's really sorry. At least I caught it. JJ Elliott started 36th, dead last on the field. And I mean, starting dead last and doing what he did last week, I could see taking a couple shots on him. But 32nd in single lap. Dylan needs an 18th place to pay off. Starting 28th, 18th, 10 spots. Yeah. Yeah, I mean that's enough. Are you saying in cash or in tournament play? I mean I think in either one. I think Gillen's a safe play in cash or tournament. I mean nothing's safe in tournament really, but I think for a cash play when you're looking find a little bit of value, I think Gillen is a pretty good spot, and I think Michael McDowell's a good spot. And then from there, you've saved enough money that you can play almost anything else you want, to an extent. You always aim for 6 times value. Okay, yeah. I mean, and if Gillen can make it up to 18th or better, yeah, you're right there. I mean, kind of like JJ Yelly. I mean, starting 36, I've never had a problem with taking the guy starting shotgun on the field. There's nowhere to go but up. And because we run 36, the worst you're going to get is 4 points. Now, that sucks when it comes to it, but if you can have any type of luck and you can get 10 spots forward, you're looking at what, 14? You're looking at, I mean, 23 points, 24 points at 4,900. Okay. And Rick Ware's putting money into his cars now. Now he's not putting a lot. He is putting some. There is something to be said about that. I'm just not sold on betting on the 51 car yet. I'm watching it closely. If things continue to trend in the right direction, I could get behind JJ a little bit more, or at least the 51 and Rick Ware. But time will tell. I'm just not ready to pull that trigger yet. Is it time for Ty Dillon to just hang it up and just become a Truck Series regular or an Xfinity Series regular? I mean, I would rather go out and have a consistent top 15 with a shot to win every once in a while in Xfinity than be Ty Dillon in the Cup Series. I know you want to be racing on Sundays, but wouldn't you rather race for lead lap in top 15, top 10? Because Ty Dillon's got that. There's enough money. Grandpa's got enough money that he would put Ty Dillon in a competitive Xfinity ride or a competitive truck ride. I don't know. I've never figured out. And Ty Dillon's not a bad race car driver. I just think it's time for Ty Dillon just to swallow the pill and just be like, hey, I'm not good enough to be a Cup driver competitively. So I want to go be a truck driver and I want to win championships. I want to win races and those types of things. And maybe in time comes, you move back up. I don't have any interest. I have a little bit of interest in Ty Dillon, more so than JJ Ely or Greg Golding or BJ McLeod, because Spire puts a little bit more money into their program. Not much, but a little bit. So I like Ty Dillon more than I like JJ, Greg Golding, or BJ McLeod. Which actually BJ's got a really cool car this week. They've really stepped up their game on paint schemes. So I'll give that much to BJ. And BJ is actually really entertaining once you ever listen to an interview with him or anything like that. But no interest in putting money on BJ McLeod. So the guys that I like this week, potential dominators or high finishing positions with some PD upside, Kyle Larson and Christopher Bell. And then I like Martin Truex, William Byron to potentially actually be true dominators, along with good finishing spots. I like, of course, Ross Chastain coming from 8th, Ryan Blaney starting 2nd, shotgun on the pole, Denny Hamlin, Kevin Harvick. I mean, all the normal, typical guys. And then place differential. I think Brad Kay's got a great shot at having top 10, along with Briscoe. Bubba Wallace, maybe. Alex Bowman's got some good PD upside potential. Chris Buescher, Eric Almirola. Eric Jones coming from 31st place. Brian Priest coming from 29th. And then our value, I really like McDowell. Stenhouse, I mean, he came in ranked 22nd, but I don't love that or Austin Cindric or Austin Dillon. This is just where they ranked out. I don't love those plays. I think I'd much rather take a Todd Gillen. I really do like the Todd Gillen play starting 28th. And then you've got some long shots with Noah Gragson and Carson Hocevar. So that's kind of where I'm sitting on all that. If we look at last year's race, AJ started 35th and finished 10th. Made the optimal lineup. Eric Jones went from 21st to 7th. Kyle Busch and Joe Logano led 66 and 22 laps each. Both started within the top 12. Not a huge place differential place. We had 4 guys finish 10 spots better. No real dominator, but being in the next gen car first race last year at Gateway, we weren't going to see a whole lot of dominators, especially with this next gen car. And we're not going to see again this year. We're going to see some comers and goers. So then if we look at other style tracks, Phoenix from earlier this year, I mean, Kevin Harvick 15th to 5th. We had, 2 place differentials, 2 values, 3 finishes, $500 left. Kyle Larson led 201 laps. Kyle started from the pole and finished 4th. Kyle starting from 22nd. That is a little bit of a trouble spot for Kyle, starting in the middle of the pack like that. That's when typically sometimes he gets himself into trouble. So a little wary on the Kyle Larson play, but this is going to be right up their wheelhouse, though, Kyle Larson and William Byron. This has been where they've been really, really good. So, then if we look at Nashville from last year, Denny Hamlin led 114 laps. Chase Elliott's not in this race, but Michael McDowell. Cindric started 24th, but I mean, that's the whole thing. Austin Cindric's starting too far up from me, and so is Bubba Wallace. Bubba Wallace starting 20th, where started 30th. I mean, that's a big place differential. I do like Martin Truex Jr. Led 172 laps in New Hampshire last year on a similar style track. Christopher Bell led 42 and went from 5th to 1st. Kevin Harvick, once again, showing up in the optimal lineup from New Hampshire. And Bubba Wallace, 4th to 3rd. So, I mean, maybe take a shot on Bubba. I don't know. I just can't wrap my head around Bubba Wallace for some reason. And it's not the reason that everybody thinks it is. It's just I got something mentally blocking him. Either way, we'll stay away from that subject. I appreciate everybody turning in. Andrew, glad you had a great week last week. I know Family Man's had a couple of good weeks. If you guys have made it to the end, I appreciate it. James, thanks for joining. Also, if you're still here, who else was here? Paul, I know you were here earlier. I don't know if you're still here now, but either way, good luck tomorrow. It's good. Yeah, it's just because we don't have a lot of information about this track, it makes it a little bit tough. It's also going to be the hottest race we've had this year. So tire wear might be a little bit more of a factor, at least because of the heat. And also the heat inside these cars gets pretty warm. I mean, the Truck Series today had 122, 124 degree interior heat on the car. It's hot. And I know these guys run cool suits, but the first race where it's this hot always is a struggle. Hope everyone gets a first place. Well, we can't all get a first place. Let's all finish top 10. If we all finish top 10s, yeah, that'd be awesome. Hey, I'd love to split first with 4 people that we all took similar lineups from this show. Yep. But guys, good luck with your stuff tomorrow. We're an hour and 25. Try to keep this thing. I'd like to keep it about an hour, but I get rambling. That would be awesome if we all hit top 10s in the Chrome Horn. That would be pretty awesome. Not sure if it's 1 or 2 Dominators or if it's the points are spread. I think what I'm shooting after is probably a blend of Dominator and finishing position. So, if maybe like we'll take Kyle Busch starting from the pole. If Kyle Busch can go out and lead the first 45 laps, not have any trouble on the first pit stop, unless he goes and leads the next 45 laps. So that's 90 laps. That's enough of a Dominator. It's not quite a full Dominator. I always look at 30% or more laps led to truly be in the Dominator category. But then if he finishes 3rd or 4th in the race, that's going to be enough to put him in the optimal lineup or really, really close to it. So yeah, I think it's much more you're looking at the Dominator because we don't have a lot of laps. This only 240 laps, but we don't have a lot of Dominator points. I think you've got to look at the Dominator to also being somebody who's got a great finishing spot. So, what was it earlier? Yeah, I mean, Kyle Larson, who started first and finished 4th, but led 201 laps. I mean, he ended up with 111 points. Now, that was at 317. But even if you cut the laps led down by 100, that's only a 25-point swing. So that takes him into the 80s or 90s right there with William Byron. It still puts him in the optimal lineup. So hopefully that answered your question. I'm looking at 2 blended Dominator finishing positions. I'm looking at probably 3 place differentials and then 1 probably value pick that ends up in 12th that started 28th. That was Todd Gillen? Like that? I don't know. Throwing it out there. Either way, good luck, guys. Have a great weekend. And we will see you next Saturday for Sonoma. So next Saturday night, somewhere between 9 and 11 is when I'm going to try to be online. So try to find the sweet spot around 10. I appreciate everybody tuning in. We will talk to you next week. Good luck, and we'll see you then. Thanks. Bye.
Get a good deep breath. Get ready to roll here. Only about one thing tonight, getting the W, so got to be around at the end to do that. Get ready to roll tonight, boys. Let's go have some fun.
Don't get me any more fired up than I already am.
All the way to the checkered. You're fine. Nobody's got to run. Checker time, baby!
Hell yeah!
Proud of you there, Matt. Good job, pal. Thanks, man. Good job all day. Great work, my man. Great work. Keep putting yourself in position. We'll win our share, right? We got one back today, brother. Good job.
Great job, guys.
Excellent work, my man. Excellent work. Thank you.
Man, that's awesome. Set out with a goal we got in here, bud. Thank you very much.
Really proud of you, man. Drove your butt off tonight. We had the fastest car here, bud.
Probably killed our deal there. Just feel like I gave one away. Yeah, boys. Way to rebound. Great job.
Great job, bud. Really good job. Appreciate you hanging in there with us all weekend.
What a weekend. Good job. Thank you.